In Formula One, the drivers are, of course, the main stars of the show, but in recent years, the team principals of each team have been gaining a bit more stardom and a bit more talk around the F1 community due to things like Drive to Survive, as well as feuds between them, such as Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. They're really starting to be a bit more known and become more interesting figures in the paddock that we hear from more often and see pretty frequently. So I thought it would be fun to dig into all of their backgrounds, kind of how they got into Formula One and how they became team principals. So let's get into each of the team principals in Formula One 2025. Hello everybody, my name is Michael and welcome back to Last to First. First, I want to start off with Red Bull, and their team principal is, of course, Christian Horner. Now, he's been the team principal since their inception in 2005, which makes him the longest-serving team principal on the grid. Prior to becoming a team principal, he was actually a race-winning driver in Formula Renault and British Formula 3, so he does have a pretty solid racing background before he got more into the management side of things. Now, he started dipping his toes into the management and team leadership side of things when he got a role at Arden, which was a single-seater racing team in Formula 3000, and where he actually started as a driver there, but eventually transitioned to be team manager. Now, Horner has seen a great deal of success in Formula One, but it didn't always start that way when he got into Formula One. He and Red Bull took over a team in the form of Jaguar that was not so good. They were really on the back foot, had been underfunded, and were not performing particularly well. They needed a lot of rebuilding, and it was going to take a lot of work for Christian Horner and Red Bull to build this team into the force that it would become. It took 5 years, but eventually it was worth it, and he helped to build the team to where they were able to bring home both titles 4 years in a row consecutively from 2010 to 2013. However, after that period of dominance, they were not able to find success for quite some time again. Due to a tumultuous relationship with Renault, their engine supplier, they didn't win another title until 2021, where Max Verstappen won the driver's title. And then, of course, they moved on to the new rules in 22 and 23, where they did dominate and also brought home a title in 2024. Now, it hasn't been all success and all sunshines and rainbows for Christian Horner as the team principal of Red Bull. In late 2023 and early 2024, he did face allegations of inappropriate behavior. The exact details are a bit unknown, but this caused a lot of turmoil in Red Bull, and Horner was nearly ousted from the team entirely. However, after an internal investigation and an appeal, Horner was cleared of any wrongdoing. After that, Horner and Red Bull rallied back to bring home the driver's title in 2024, despite all of that outside noise going on. All in all, Horner is still a pretty young team principal, and I think he has a lot more to give to the world of Formula One. We'll see how he continues and where he goes from here on out, but so far his career has been pretty outstanding, and I bet he'll find more success as things continue. Next up, I think it's only appropriate to move on to Christian Horner's best friend, and that is the team principal of Mercedes, Toto Wolff. Now, Wolff, like Horner, did have a racing career before becoming who they are today, but it was a bit less successful than the one that Horner had. Toto is primarily a businessman, and that's how he really got into the world of Formula One. In the early 2000s, he began investing in DTM and rally teams, and 2009 is when he really properly got involved in F1 by buying a minority stake in Williams. He eventually became executive director before selling his stake to focus on another venture, and that venture was a 30% stake in Mercedes in 2013. That also saw him become the team principal, and it has seen a great deal of success, of course, with him at the helm of things at Mercedes. They saw pure dominance from 2014 to 2021, where they won all but one title, of course in 2021, where they lost out the Drivers' Championship. Wolff at the helm of the Mercedes team has seen some success that really nobody has seen before, and maybe nobody will see again. But while we can't overlook all of the success, questions are starting to be asked about Wolff's leadership due to their lack of performance since the new ground effect era started in 2022. The Formula One world has a pretty short-term memory, and even though it was just a few years ago that they were dominating, they are no longer dominating, and they've been on the back foot. So the question is, will Wolff be able to bring Mercedes back to really fighting for championships championships or not? Or will they need some more fresh blood into the team to make that happen again? One way or another, Wolff will go down as one of the best business people in Formula One, as well as having one of the most successful teams ever in Formula One. So no matter what happens, he'll have had a very successful career. Toto Wolff and Christian Horner have really brought team principles, I think, to kind of the forefront of people's, I guess, conversations because of their rivalry and their feud. After all the craziness of 2021, they just always seem to be at each other's throats and always have something to say to one another, always throwing a jab here or there, and it makes for some really great entertainment. So we hope to continue to see some of that drama going forward, and yeah, they really put team principles on the map, I feel. Now we move on to a more reserved team principal, and that is Fred Vasseur of Ferrari. He started his career as an engineer in France, and he quickly found his way into motorsport. He founded the ASM Formula 3 team, and then later founded Art Grand Prix, which has had a great deal of success. During his time, he helped nurture some great young drivers, some of which were Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, of course, 2 champions. And now we have the rejoining of Hamilton and Fred Vasseur at Ferrari, so that's going to make for an interesting combination. He eventually found his way into Formula One when he became team principal of Renault for just a year, and then he had a longer stint as a team principal at Sauber/Alfa Romeo. However, since 2023, he has taken on a whole another challenge in the form of being the team principal of Ferrari. The team principal of Ferrari is traditionally one of the hardest jobs in Formula One. Ferrari does not waste time, they do not mess about, and they are not afraid to get rid of their team principal. So it's going to be a really big challenge for Fred Vasseur to maintain control of this Ferrari ship. Since his time at Ferrari has been short so far, we don't exactly know what his tenure will look like. You know, will it be a successful one like past Ferrari team principals like Jean Todt or other successful team principals like Horner or Wolff? Or is he going to succumb to the struggles and pressures of Ferrari and just be ousted after a few seasons? So far, Ferrari under his leadership has been on a positive trajectory, and I think these next couple years will really cement his time at Ferrari and how we look at it. But so far, it's been a pretty positive one for him. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. We're almost at 100 subscribers, which is a really exciting milestone for me. If you are interested, give the video a like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Now we move on to McLaren with Andrea Stella. Andrea Stella came from an engineering background like a lot of the team principals, and he started for Ferrari back in 2000. He was a race engineer for some great drivers like Schumacher, Raikkonen, and Alonso at Ferrari. In 2015, he moved to McLaren, and he quickly ascended the ranks and gained a lot of respect in the team. He was head of race operations there, and then he was racing director before becoming team principal. He really gained a lot of respect from the team because he did such a good job as an engineer, and everybody, I think, in the team was very happy to see him get promoted to team principal. He's one of the more quiet team principals, but he is extremely effective and has settled into the role quite nicely, and I think he's been a really perfect fit for McLaren and has helped really bring them back around to winning ways. He's helped turn their fortunes around and was able to win the Constructors last year and then have half a sniff of a fight for the Drivers' Championship as well. So going forward, I see Andrea Stella leading the ship of McLaren for quite some time. He's done a tremendous job so far, and he only looks to be able to continue on with that success going forward. Aston Martin is a really interesting case. They have Andy Cowell joining the team, both as CEO and team principal, after they removed Mike Crack from team principal. They are building quite the super team there between Cowell and Adrian Newey, and having Alonso there as well, amongst lots of other people that they have recruited. That team is quite the power super team. It's just a matter of will they be able to live up to those expectations in the future, or if there's just going to be too many big names and it won't all gel well together. We will see in the coming years. But going on to Andy Cowell a bit more, kind of like Stella, he's an engineer at heart. His expertise was in engine development, which really shaped his future success in Formula One. He began his career in F1 at Cosworth Engines in the 90s, and he continued to work his way up the engineering ladder with BMW and Williams. He is, of course, most well known for his brilliant success at Mercedes in the turbo hybrid era. The Mercedes engine was by far the best engine, and it led them to 8 Constructors' Championships in a row, and he was a very pivotal part to making that happen. Now he's climbed the ladder even more by becoming the team principal and the CEO at Aston Martin after a few years out of F1. Cowell, I think, could be particularly beneficial for Aston because of his past success with the engine formula in 2014. His experience with all of that, working with Mercedes and developing the best engine, is going to be particularly useful with Aston as they are getting ready to become or have a works partnership with Honda in 2026 onwards. So will he be able to emulate that same success? That's going to be tough, but if there's anybody that can do it, he seems to be the right one to be able to make that happen. Next up, we have another new team principal in Alpine, and that is Ollie Oakes. Ollie Oakes is one who also came from a driving background. He actually won championships in karting, and interestingly enough, he was a Red Bull junior in his early days. He didn't find quite the same success in car racing as he did in kart racing, so he transitioned into the team management side of things. He founded a karting team initially, and then he co-founded High Tech GP in 2015, which competes in F2 and F3, and was recently a bidder to become an F1 team, but lost out to Cadillac, of course. Oakes is one of the youngest ever team principals to be appointed, and there's been a lot of similarities between him and Christian Horner at Red Bull. I think Oakes has taken a lot of inspiration from what he's been able to do at Red Bull, and I think he's going to try to emulate that same success with Alpine, or maybe whatever they become in the future. Oakes and Alpine has been a really interesting case because there's been a lot of speculation around his future with the Alpine team. Alpine certainly hasn't said it's the case, but it looks like Alpine will be up for sale in a few years' time. Since Oakes, already founded High Tech and already had a bid to join Formula One before he became team principal of Alpine, I think a logical step is for Oakes and High Tech to take over Alpine and buy their way into F1 rather than setting up a whole brand new team. Between him and Flavio Briatore being at Alpine now, it looks like it might be a match made in heaven for Oakes to take over the Alpine team in a few years' time. At Racing Bulls, I guess we can finally officially call them Racing Bulls now rather than RB, we have Laurent Mikes. Mikes has had a tenured motorsport career. He's been an engineer through and through. He started in Formula 3 and then transitioned to Formula 1, where he was a race engineer for drivers like Mark Webber. He became part of the Red Bull family through their acquisition of Minardi, and he moved up the engineering ranks and became head of vehicle performance. Mikes has some more unique experience than maybe some of the other team principals on the grid because of his time working for the FIA as the safety director. From there, he moved on to Ferrari, where he became racing director and had a successful tenure there before making another big step up to be the team principal of Racing Bulls. Mikes is probably in one of the more interesting and challenging positions as a team principal because of Racing Bull's connection to their sister team, Red Bull. Since they operate as that sister team, their ceiling and potential is pretty limited. So it feels like there's only so much that team can accomplish in the future, but it is certainly a good proving ground for Mikes to maybe move on to a bigger team in the future. Next up, we have a super exciting team principal at Williams, and that is James Vowles. Now, James Vowles is also an engineer through and through. He's renowned as an accomplished and a very intellectual individual in the world of Formula One. He started out at BAR and quickly got to winning ways as a strategist for Braun GP. But his real success came at Mercedes, where he helped to, of course, achieve 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships and 7 Drivers' Championships as the strategy director. During Mercedes' peak, he was one of the spearheads of the main team, leading Mercedes along with Andy Cowell and Toto Wolff. Since becoming the team principal of Williams, he's gained a lot of momentum to try to return the team to former glory. He's gotten them more funding, sponsorships, and has 2-star drivers. He's super well respected, and people seem to believe in the vision that he is creating at Williams. While I do feel for the time being he is fully invested in Williams, and I think he will do a great job there, I think if the time does come that Toto Wolff gives up the team principal role at Mercedes, I would not be surprised at all to see Vowles wind up back at Mercedes in that role, given their close ties. I think had Toto Wolff stepped away earlier, Vowles would have been in prime position to take over that position. So I would not be surprised at all to see him back at Mercedes down the line. For the penultimate team principal at Sauber, Kick Sauber, Stake F1 team, soon to be Audi, whatever we want to call them, we have a team principal that hasn't even started yet, and that is Jonathan Wheatley. Wheatley started out life in motorsport as a junior mechanic. He worked up to chief mechanic, where he helped Benetton and Renault win championships in the early 2000s. His progression and success in F1 continued when he joined Red Bull as team manager and later as the sporting director. His work directly contributed to Red Bull having some of the fastest pit stops in F1 history, and that's a theme that continues with Red Bull today. And of course, he also helped Red Bull to secure multiple titles during his time there. He's a very sought after and respected individual in the F1 world, and many teams would have wanted his services. I'm sure it was very difficult to get him away from the Red Bull family. Ultimately, Audi was able to win out his services, where he was able to make another big step in his career as the team principal. He might have the hardest team principal job in all of F1 because he is tasked with a particularly challenging situation where he's going to be responsible for trying to bring Audi from the back of the grid as Sauber to winning ways as Audi in a few years' time. That is going to be a challenge that should not be understated because they have a tremendously long way to go. Unfortunately, we have yet to see what Wheatley will do as the team principal since he has not started quite yet. He's been on gardening leave after leaving Red Bull, and he doesn't officially start until the 2025 season gets underway. So we really won't see much of his impact until 2026 and beyond. Last but not least, we have Komatsu at Haas. This is his second year in F1 as a team principal, and he's kind of been a shock to most of us, I think, in the world of Formula One. He really turned Haas around after the departure of Gunther Steiner and started making some really immediate gains. I don't think anybody thought that he would be able to start helping the team as quickly as he did, but almost immediately we started to see progress from that team when he became the team principal. His engineering background has allowed him to make changes to really streamline everything and maximize everything they can out of what they have, which is not a lot given it is a pretty small team. Komatsu, like the Cowells and the Vowles of the world, is an engineer through and through, and there was maybe some surprise of his appointment, not because he wasn't deserving or capable, but just because his primary focus had also been on the engineering side of things rather than the management side of things. He began his career as a tire engineer in the early 2000s, where he quickly was promoted to performance engineer at Renault and race engineer at Lotus for drivers like Romain Grosjean. Komatsu followed Grosjean to Haas, where he gained additional responsibilities as trackside engineering director and director of engineering before becoming team principal. While I think there is a ceiling on what Haas can achieve in Formula One, it does seem that Komatsu is starting to maximize what that team can do, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them have a pretty strong year again this year. He's been a pretty pleasant surprise in the world of team principals, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do this year and going forward. So that's a brief background on all of the team principals in Formula One. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more drama between them this year and in the coming years. Next up, we have launch season, which is so exciting, and preseason testing is right around the corner. Next thing you know, the season is going to be starting, and I am so ready to get everything going. If you are excited to see more, give the video a like and subscribe, and I will be putting out lots of content about preseason testing and of course once the season gets underway. You can follow me on social media. I'm on X as Last to First Real, first spelled F1RST, and also on Instagram as Last to First, first spelled F1RST. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.